That same afternoon Harun held the baby up in the air, turned towards Mecca and recited the azan, the call to prayer, into her right ear. You, my daughter, you who, Allah willing, will be the first of many children under this roof. You with eyes dark as the night, I'll name you Layla. But you won't be just any Layla. I'll also give you my mother's names. Your 9 was an honorable woman, she was very pious, as I am certain you'll be one day. I'll name you Afif, chaste, untainted. And I'll name you Kamil, perfection. You'll be modest, respectable, pure as water. Harun paused with the nagging thought that not all water was pure. He added, more loudly than he intended, just to make sure there was no celestial mix-up, no misunderstanding on the part of God, spring water, clean, undefiled. All the mothers in Van will chide their daughters. Why can't you be like Layla? And husbands will say to their wives, why couldn't you give birth to a girl like Layla? Meanwhile, the baby kept trying to jam her fist into her mouth, her lips twisting into a grimace each time she failed. You'll make me so proud, Harun carried on. True to your religion, true to your nation, true to your father. Frustrated with herself, and finally realizing that her clenched hand was simply too big, the baby broke into a wail, as though determined to make up for her early silence. Quickly, she was handed over to Binaz, who, without a second of hesitation, began to nurse her, a sizzling pain drawing rings around her nipples like a marauding bird circling the skies. Later on, when the baby had fallen asleep, Suzanne, who had been waiting to one side, approached the bed, careful not to make a noise. Avoiding eye contact, she took the infant from her mother. I'll bring her back when she cries, Suzanne said, and swallowed. Don't worry. I'll take good care of her. Binaz said nothing in return, her face as pale and worn as an old porcelain plate. Nothing emanated from her, except the sound of her breathing, faint but unmistakable. Her womb, her mind, this house, even the ancient lake where many a heartbroken lover was rumored to have drowned, everything felt hollowed out and dried up. Everything but her sore, swollen breasts, leaking rivulets of milk. Now alone in the room with her husband, Binaz waited for him to speak. It was not an apology she wanted to hear as much as an admission of the injustice she faced and the enormous hurt it would do to her. But he, too, said nothing. And so it was that the baby girl, born to a family of 1 husband and 2 wives on the 6th of January 1947, in the city of Van the Pearl of the East was named Layla Afif Kamil. Such self-assured names, grandiose and unambiguous. Big mistakes, as it would turn out. For while it was true that she carried the night in her eyes, befitting the name Layla, it would soon become clear that her middle names were far from apt. She wasn't flawless, even to begin with. Her many shortcomings ran through her life like underground streams. In truth, she was a walking embodiment of imperfection, once she figured out how to walk, that is. And as for staying chaste, time would show how. For reasons not of her own doing, that would not exactly be her thing either. She was to be Layla Afif Kamil, full of virtue, high in merit. But years later, after she had turned up in Istanbul, alone and broke, after she had seen the sea for the first time, amazed at how that vast expanse of blue stretched to the horizon, after she had noticed that the curls in her hair turned to frizz in the humid air, after she had awoken one morning in a strange bed next to a man she had never seen before and her chest felt so heavy she thought she could never draw breath again, after she had been sold to a brothel where she was forced to have sex with 10 to 15 men each day in a room with a green plastic bucket on the floor, collecting the water that dripped from the ceiling every time it rained, long after all that, she would be known to her 5 dear friends, one eternal love and many clients as Tequila Layla. When men asked, and they often did, why she insisted on spelling Layla as Layla, and whether by doing so she was trying to make herself seem Western or exotic, she would laugh and say that one day she went to the bazaar and traded the Y of yesterday for the I of infinity, and that was that. In the end, none of this would make any difference to the newspapers that covered her murder. Most did not care to mention her by name, finding her initials sufficient. The same photo accompanied almost all the articles, one of Layla's unrecognizable old snaps, back from her secondary school years. The editors could have chosen a more recent image. Of course, even a headshot from the police archives, had they not worried that the sight of Layla's heavy makeup and conspicuous cleavage might offend the nation's sensitivities. Her death was also covered on national TV on the evening of the 29th of November 1990. It followed a lengthy report on the United Nations Security Council resolution to authorize military intervention in Iraq, the after-effects of the tearful resignation of the Iron Lady in Britain, the continuing tension between Greece and Turkey following the violence in Western Thrace and the looting of stores owned by ethnic Turks and the mutual expulsion of the Turkish consul in Komotini and the Greek consul in Istanbul. The merging of West Germany and East Germany's national football teams after the unification of the two countries, the repeal of the constitutional requirement for a married woman to get her husband's permission to work outside the home, and the smoking ban on Turkish Airlines flights, despite passionate protests from smokers nationwide. Towards the end of the program, a bright yellow band scrolled along the bottom of the screen: prostitute found slain in city waste bin, fourth in a month. Panic spreads among Istanbul's sex workers.